if you don't think that I'm going to speak out on some of these issues that where we may disagree, then you really did not read my book.
Today's episode is brought to you by HEB Curbside and Delivery. When life throws you a loop, HEB Curbside and Delivery is here to help. We shop how you shop, so you get exactly what you want. Order today at HEB.com. HEB Curbside and Delivery. It's never been easier to shop HEB.
I'm so excited that our guest today is someone whom I have wanted to talk to for the longest time on this podcast. And when I ran into her not too long ago and said, "Would you be on my podcast?" And she said, "Of course I will," I almost fainted. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is research professor at the University of Houston, 5-time New York Times best-selling author, TED Talk icon, and overall badass, Dr. Brene Brown. Brene, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. I have loved you since the very beginning. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
I can't believe you even said that. Thank you so much. You know, it's as a Houstonian who counts you somewhat of a neighbor, I get to see you every now and then here in Houston at different events. And I remember years and years ago when you did a speech, I think shortly after your TED Talk, and you just wowed the crowd, and I just couldn't wait to see what you were going to do next. You've got a lot going on right now, lady. You are everywhere.
It's so weird, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I wish I could invent, I wonder if you feel this way sometimes. I wish I could invent a geographic bubble so that my work could get out to the world, but no one in Houston would see it. It's weird when my neighbors are like, "Hey, I saw you on Netflix." I'm like, that wasn't me. It's weird.
I love that. So for those of you who have not heard about her Netflix special, and if you've not watched it, you need to, run, don't walk to see it. It is amazing. And it's just, you talk about so much there about your work, but there's so much about it that so many favorite moments. But one of them is when you were talking about how sometimes when you're on a plane and people are sitting next to you and you have to decide if you want to chat or not.
Yeah.
And when somebody says, "Well, what do you do for a living?" and you say, "Shame researcher," that's when you don't want to talk.
That's when I don't want to talk. And it's really easy because, I study people for a living. So I can almost guess what I would have to say to someone to shut them down. So it's really awful. Now that I hear you saying it, doesn't sound very nice, but it's hard because I'm really introverted and I'm really private. And, I fly Southwest Airlines a lot because they're just my favorites. And it's open seating. And so if I'm not flying with a colleague, someone can see me and they get that wild-eyed look in their, and they're like, "I'm going to sit here and we're going to talk about my shame story for the next 3 hours." And I'm like, oh God.
Oh God. Oh God.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up, did you ever think you would grow up to be a shame researcher, to do the kind of work that you're doing?
No, but it makes sense. I mean, I grew up in a family where shame was a pretty powerful parenting tool. I mean, that was just the norm back then. I think all of us grew up with at least people my age grew up with a pretty healthy dose of shame. My parents didn't even have to say anything. We just had a look. And there was no distinguishing, no one ever said to me, "You're not a bad girl, you made a bad choice." That was not in the lexicon. So I never thought I'd be a shame researcher, but I did know from very early on, probably by 5 or 6, that I was an expert pattern finder. I thought it was like a superpower. I was going to Catholic school at the time and I thought, oh my God, I might be I might have a superpower that no one knows about because I could predict people's behaviors based on what I saw them feeling.
So now that you've got this body of work, and of course your books, all of them are just so insightful and filled with so much useful information. And I know that you've got this body of work that helps us try to understand who we are as human beings and what we can be and how we can show up in the world. I had a really fun time listening to your podcast with Russell Brand. What a great conversation that was. And you guys touched on so many different things. And one of them was about pain. And the whole idea of this podcast is to help remind us of our common humanity and to
Yeah.
get us back to some kind of civil discourse through the sharing of stories. And you are such a consummate storyteller. And I want to try to help, I want you to try to help us connect the dots between the pain that we feel as humans that we then inflict on others because of things that have not worked out on ourselves, within ourselves. Can you kind of take me through what your thoughts are on that based on your research?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's a simple truth about all of us. It is so much easier to cause pain than to feel pain. I mean, and we're not good at it. And I mean, it's uncomfortable and it hurts because it's pain. But I think culturally, somewhere along in the last maybe 30, 40 years, we've come to believe that we're entitled to a life that does not include pain. And that so a metric of success is no pain. Like we can buy ourselves out of pain or acquire acquisition out of pain. And pain is just a part of the human experience. And so there's one of my favorite quotes in the world is by Father Richard Rohr that says, pain that is not transformed will be transmitted.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think you see today in the world is a lot of untransformed pain directed at other people. And, it's the person who can sit with their pain, transform it, understand it, and grow from it that I think those are the people who are saving us all the time. Those are people like you who are starting conversations in the middle, around civility. Like, I just can't believe we live in a world where civility is out of style.
It's astounding to me. It
What
is
does that mean?
absolutely incredible to me that this is the world we're living in right now. Um, and I know you believe that story has a central place in this dialogue. Can you talk a little bit about the power of story and how it can help us heal and bridge the divides that are out there as a result of all the pain that's being inflicted?
Yeah, I think the process of owning our story, I mean, I think part of what does that mean, pain transformed? I think the way you transform pain is you own our story. You own the story of the hard thing, of the failure, of the divorce, of the bankruptcy, of the illness, of the infertility, of you know, the shaming thing that you did. You own that story. And you love yourself in the process of owning it, and you learn from it and be better, instead of when you orphan that story and you pretend like those things are not happening in our lives, then those stories own us and we spend our entire lives running from them. And you know I think politics has become such a you know one of the things that I've observed, and I've observed this especially of this administration, but of other administrations as well, across both sides of the aisle, that like if you give people something destructive to do with their pain, if you give them someone to blame, if you give them a cause, and you tell them you can blame this person, you can hate this person, this is their fault that you're in pain, you can rule the world, literally, because people are so desperate to understand whose fault it is that I'm hurting so much. And it's, you hurt so much, I hurt so much, because we're human. Like, I write really openly about being in recovery. I write, like, we hurt because we feel, and we're stricken by heartbreak and grief because we love, and hurt is a part of it. And so this idea that it's just, we're trying to tap out a feeling because somehow we started to believe that it's weakness. And I just see, we just let me take off what people might be thinking. Oh my God, this touchy-feely, who's this touchy-feely woman? Let me take off that hat and just say, as a researcher who just crossed 400,000 pieces of data, there is no evidence that vulnerability and feeling are weakness. What we know for sure is that vulnerability and the willingness to be in uncertainty and risk and emotional exposure is our greatest measure of courage. There is no courage without vulnerability. And I've had this validated from everyone from special forces that I work with in the military to CEOs of Fortune 10 companies. Like, this is not touchy-feely stuff. This is hard, tough reality that to be brave and contribute and show up in the world, we have to be strong enough to deal with our emotions.
And that's the crux of it. That is the absolute crux of it. And the data, as you say, backs all of this up. It's not touchy-feely. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the political realm of where we are. And I know I've heard you say before that sometimes when people start to understand where you are politically, they get upset because they feel as though they know you, or they think they know you, or they knew you, they looked up to you. But then when they find out, what your political beliefs are, then all of a sudden they're upset. How do you handle that?
It's such a hard question because I'm in the midst of learning how to deal with that, because I will go out on social media or something with something I really believe in strongly, that to me is a human rights issue. And people will share the most profound disappointment in me. Like, you helped me get through my divorce, or you helped me when my child went into recovery, and now I hate you because we have different positions on immigration. And first I have to resist the really pissed off, like, I'm a fight fire with fire kind of person, which is it's a character defect for sure. But I have to first, like, just to soothe myself, pretend what I would write in response, because it's always so crafty and good, but cruel. And so that's not good. And then I just have to let it go. And what I think to myself, though, is if you don't think that I'm going to speak out on some of these issues that where we may disagree, then you really did not read my book. You took from it what you needed, which is great, but you don't understand me at all, or what I'm saying. Because here's the thing. It's the quote, like, I may disagree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with respectful, difficult discourse and debate. What I have a problem with is dehumanizing, hateful, cruel rhetoric. And so if we want to have a real conversation around immigration, great. If you're just telling me, I hope you die with your bald eagle avatar and your anonymity, then for me, I file that under chicken shit. Like I cannot take that on. Like that is not brave behavior. You may be a brave person, but you're at that time not engaging in brave behavior. And so to me, the fundamental human need is to be seen and loved. And I think in order to be seen and loved, we have to be our whole integrated selves. We can't disown the parts of ourselves that might piss off the social media followers or, the highfalutin Houstonians who invite us, both of us, to things, because you can't be seen if it's not all of you. And so I think for me, I've just taken the tack of, and I've been under attack by the left and the right, because I am like a radical moderate around a lot of issues, which I think people find disappointing on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I am an unapologetic believer in civility. I don't think that I don't think we should not get enraged or be angry. I just think shame is a tool of oppression. Therefore, it will not be a tool of social justice. I will not engage in shaming people for the right reasons, because that doesn't make sense to me. So I guess the long-winded answer to your question is, I'm going to be all of me. I'm not going to orphan or strip down parts of myself to make you comfortable, because the price is too high for me.
I'm with you. I'm so with you on that. It's interesting because as a journalist, it's you don't ever want your audience, at least the way I was taught as a journalist, was that I don't ever want the audience to know what my political beliefs are. If I'm imparting the news to you, then, ostensibly I should be giving you all sides of whatever the issue is, and then you, the audience, should be able to make up your own mind. And when I decided to launch the podcast, one of the things that I have on the website says that this is not a political show. It's not about politics. It is about the contentious times in which we're living, and politics are a part of that. But the whole point is to share our stories in an effort to find some sort of commonality. And I had an interesting sort of back and forth conversation last night with someone on the Our Voices Matter Facebook page. And she started with her comment was something about the liberal lefties, and she went on from there. And my response was, thank you for engaging in conversation here. I'd like to respectfully suggest that we refrain from labeling each other. And the whole point here is to not label. It's to listen and to have an open mind and to be able to have a conversation with someone who may have a point of view that's different from yours, and you can listen and respect that and engage in a meaningful dialogue, but enough with the labeling and the dehumanization, et cetera, because of what we all know what that can lead to. And I'm so thankful for your voice, Brene, in the conversation that we're having as a human race right now, because it is so vital. I don't think that that we can move in the direction that we need to move without having these kinds of conversations and your work with the data to back it up.
Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you putting yourself out there trying to facilitate these conversations, because it's not easy, because people are almost forgetting how to do it. They're just, their knee-jerk response is, oh, those right-wing fascists, those left-wing, liberals. And, it's like, it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
So meaningless, unfortunately, and there are just very few places to have these conversations. What's interesting is when I went on tour, the book tour for Braving the Wilderness, which is a book about, Braving the Wilderness was really, I kind of stepped out of what I was doing and said, let me address how we experience true belonging and being seen in this really polarized world. And, the name of the first chapter is People Are Hard to Hate Close Up, Move In. What's funny is, like, while the social media platforms are full of the vitriol, most of us intensely love someone whose politics we find incomprehensible, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or a colleague or a friend. And we avoid it, I guess, for the most part. At least that's the policy in my family. But it's really hard to hate people close up. I mean, it's neurobiologically defined to do that. I mean, we're not wired. I mean, the way mirror neurons and our neurology is set up, we're not wired for hate. We're not wired for violence. Like, we have to defy a really important part of our humanity and our inextricable connection with each other to treat each other like we're doing right now. And what people don't understand is that, like, if I attack you, Linda, like if I shame and belittle you and dehumanize you, it doesn't just have the potential to rearrange you. It changes me for having done it.
Absolutely.
People don't understand what they're raging, the cost that they are paying, much less the objects of their rage. They don't understand what that's doing to them. And they don't care because it's temporary. It's like taking a hit of a really great drug. It's immediate discharging of pain and hurt that brings very temporary, fast relief. And then an hour later, you feel small, you feel alone, you feel not the person you want to be. So you need more of it. So then you get back online and you just, I mean, it's like, it's the two best things that ever happened to me. And I don't know how you'll feel about the first as a reporter, but as a journalist, but like, I do not think staying glued to the 24-hour news cycle is a good thing for anybody. I don't.
I agree. Although I must say that I'm one of those who stays glued to it sometimes. And when I was on the air, my husband used to just come in and turn the TV off, because when I was on the air as a news anchor, it's part of my job, obviously,
Right.
is to know what's going on. So I was watching, news 24/7. When I wasn't on TV delivering the news, I was watching it. And at some point he was just like, you know what, you have to just stop. You just have to back away. So I get that. I get that first point. I really do.
Yeah, I think that's not good. And I think social media, we have to learn how to not pick up the hurtful comments and hold them close to our hearts. We need to not see them lying there, grab them, snuggle up with them, use them as verification that we're not good enough. We need to see them there, just kind of lying there. And then we need to courageously refrain from picking them up, or we think the opposite of picking them up is kicking them, but it's not, because it's still expending our energy. We just need to look at them and step over them and keep walking.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more.
It's hard. It's a discipline.
You have shared so many personal stories through your talks, your TED Talk, and of course through Netflix and all of the personal appearances that you do. I'm wondering if there's a story that you haven't shared that depicts a time when you felt like the other, when you were just made to feel like someone that was not worthy. I'm wondering if there's a story like that you haven't shared that you'd be willing to share now, and how you might have dealt with that.
I mean, the truth is, I mean, let me think if I can think of a single story, but I think I wrestle with that all the time.
Even now with the
today.
fame that you have and how your life has just kind of taken off.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, no, it does not. That is a shield for nothing. That means nothing. that just means more people who don't agree with you see your work and have things to say about it. But I mean, I think I'm up against that all the time. Like, I just submitted an article and got it back, and they were like, really, really hard feedback. And some of it, unfortunately, I think was true. And so I have to go to a place where I'm like, oh my God, I'm being found out finally. Like, the imposter thing comes, like, and then I'm like, you know what? This is really good feedback. I should be really grateful someone sat down and spent 2 hours going through this and giving me good feedback to make it stronger and better. But I go through that. I'm sure I've gone through it. What is today? Tuesday? Like 2 or 3 times this week already, where it's been just hearing things that I didn't want to hear, or that I took as something different. I mean, they can be small conversations with my husband, or I'm getting ready to go off the grid in October to write a book that's going to come out in 2020. And I'm wrestling with the demons about how's that going to work for, my daughter's in college, but how's that going to work for my son's schedule? And, is the only thing he's going to remember about me is the back of a laptop, and so these are just daily things. The thing that I think is the discipline for me is I can think about them, reality check them, and let them go. Or if they get stuck in my craw, if I internalize them, it's never usually more than a couple of hours before I reach out to my friend or my sisters and say, here's a story I'm making up about myself right now.
I think that is such a useful tool. I had a conversation with my husband the other night after I was rereading some of your books and, doing my prep for this interview. And I said, when we had that argument a couple months ago, the story I was telling myself was, and I said, and then I explained it. And it's such a useful tool, Brene. Thank you for that. Because sometimes we have these conversations with ourselves in our heads, and it has nothing to do with reality and what's really going on. Now I find that I'm stopping and checking myself when I start to have that conversation. So thank you for that very useful tool.
Yeah, and that came from, again, I think I'm the vessel for the research, but I learned that from the research participants. I mean, of the most extraordinarily resilient people we've interviewed over 20 something years now, what one variable that the most resilient had in common was the use of that phrase, like the story I'm telling myself or what I'm making up right now. Because when hard things happen, we're just wired to make up a story, and the stories we make up exaggerate our fears and our shame triggers. And so they're usually really awful stories. And then we behave in crazy ways, and so, yeah. So it's been a lifesaver for me.
Yes, definitely. You just mentioned the book that you're working on. Can you tell us what you're working on, what the topic is? Can you give us a sneak peek?
I'll give you a tiny sneak peek because I'm still kind of I'm still analyzing data right now. And so I can't say too much, but what I can say is a field guide for being human. I'm trying to look at, I don't know what the number is, 30 to 50 human experiences that we need to be able to identify and name in order to build empathy, resilience, compassion. So what are those experiences? Like, I have this sense that there are words for things. One of the things that I think I do contribute that I hope is helpful is when I give a lot of talks, people will come up to me and the great compliment is, I already knew everything you said, I just didn't have the language for it. And so one of the things I try to do is give language. And so I'm looking at what is the lexicon of wholeheartedness? What is the glossary, the words that we need to be able to use and understand. So that's what I'm working on.
Oh, that is going to be amazing. It's
I'm
so
excited
needed, and that's exactly right. It's trying to find the words to express what you know is the truth, what's already there. So, as we wrap up, I just want to ask you a few sort of quick questions.
Shoot.
What's your greatest fear?
Oh God, I have so many.
Okay, pick one or two.
Honestly, probably not living in my purpose.
Mhm. What's your greatest hope?
That I think people are inherently good, and and I think people are inherently good and inherently dangerous when they're in fear and pain. And my hope is that we can learn how to transform fear and pain.
What's next for you in terms of your career? You're obviously on fire, hair on fire all the time. Between your teaching and the work that you're doing with corporations and your writing, what haven't you done that you want to do?
I think deep inside of me, I'm kind of a creative. And so not even deep inside, kind of all over me, I'm a creative. I want to find new, innovative, creative ways to bring my work to people so that it resonates and helps in faster, more concrete ways.
Well, those of us who are fans of your work would love that, and you've got quite a posse now following you around the world and hanging on your every word and cheering you on, because the work that you're doing is so meaningful and so important for this world. If there were one thing that you would want to leave with our audience today, what would that be?
That everyone wants to be brave, but no one wants to be vulnerable. And there really is no courage without vulnerability. So we have to show up and let ourselves be seen, even when we can't control the outcome.
Brene, thank you so much for taking the time to share with our audience today. On a personal level, you're one of my heroes. And I was pinching myself on my way to do this interview today. I said, I can't believe I'm doing this interview with her. You know, you're my Oprah.
Oh God.
You're my Oprah.
Thank you. And it is just such a joy to talk to you. And I don't know, you bring such grace and fierceness to what you do. And that is such a rare thing. So I am equally grateful for you and the contributions you've made to our city. But I do think, when I think about you, someone asked me in our office, oh, you're talking to Linda Lorelle, and everyone knows you and knows your name. And they're like, what's she like in person? And I said, it's funny that you say Oprah, because I use this words to describe her and a couple of other women I've met in my life. But I'm like, she's tough and tender. She's both fierce and kind. Like, I wouldn't mess with her, but I'd want her on my side.
Thank you so much, Brene. Thanks to you and your team for making this happen. And we are cheering you on. We are here for you. If you ever need anything from us, you know where to find us. And just keep kicking ass, because you are doing it, girl. You are doing it.
Right back at you, sister.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for going on this journey with us. We'll see you next time.
I'm a firm believer that if we can find a way to better understand each other's experiences, we can find a way to respect and accept each other for who we are, even when we don't agree. That's the ultimate goal of this podcast. So with that in mind, what do you want the world to know about your story? How might your story, your truth, provide a different, important perspective and help bridge our divides? If you'd like to share your story with us, and have a chance to be on the podcast, all you have to do is go to our website, ourvoicesmatterpodcast.com, and click on What's Your Story? We can't wait to hear from you because your voice matters.